There are several different ways of defining the concept of art, yet my personal favorite is the idea of a human being expressing their emotions / imagination on a sheet of paper. Well, human beings for now. Now, obviously, it can be purely audible or visual, no paper included, but art forms can change and new ways can be made. We have literature, music, painting, sculptures, movies, shows, and of course, video games. Yet there is one through line when it comes to all of these and all art. Inspiration. When an artist is inspired by something, they need to express themselves in some capacity, and I don't know what inspired him to make the game Alan Wake, but Sam Lake is a massive weirdo.
And there he is.
Imagine, if you will, a video game about an author who realizes that he's in a living script that he wrote himself, with a narrative laid out as a television show with episodes, which is also connected to a miniseries and 2 games almost made a decade later. To give you an understanding on how it felt to do research on this interactive experience, it pretty much went like this.
Who's putting all this in the bin? How many portions are you putting in there? How much is in the bin? Look! Look! What the fuck is this?
But it was this deep dive into the rabbit hole that made me into a fan, and I cannot wait for the sequel. Now, before we do like the White Rabbit jumping into the dark place, I feel the need to make 2 things clear. 1. The story of Alan Wake is currently incomplete, and like any good thriller, it still holds some mystery, which I hope will explain the title of this video, having this be episode 1. And 2, because of the unanswered questions, this will be the first analysis of mine where my own interpretation of the story will be heavily my own, so please keep this in the back of your mind. Having said all that, let's jump into the mind of the poet who is trying to save his muse, Alan Wake. Born in 1978 by Linda Wake, the same year Garfield was made, there are not that much information on our writer's youth, and what we do know is difficult to pinpoint any year or date. We have the knowledge that Alan was terrified of the dark as a child, to the point where his mother would eventually give him a broken-off light switch, claiming it had the power to banish the darkness, which she called the clicker, which would have been really wholesome had it not been for another thriller's use of that same name. This genuinely helped Wake in not being scared of the dark anymore, and what else that boosted his small dose of confidence was befriending a mad lad named Barry Wheeler. Together, they would constantly be up to all sorts of mischief, where Alan had to bail them out each time they were caught. This friendship we will return to later, but again, this helped our boy gain some well-deserved ego. We also know from his childhood that the protag became a big fan of the author Stephen King, yes, the actual author, which inspired him to become a writer himself. Sadly, living as a writer isn't like any other job, so Wake had to take some smaller occupations beforehand, one being a night guard. And it was during one of his shifts where the most important thing could have happened to our young man. No, it wasn't. He met Alice, a young lady at his work, who would later become the most important person in Alan Wake's life. And like life, as time moved on, the now 18-year-old man published his first written work in 1996, a short story called Errand Boy. Only thing noteworthy of this is that he would use the same motifs and themes in his later work as well. Absent fathers, as he himself didn't know his own, and light versus dark, perhaps of his old fear of the darkness. Though like all people, he would have an inner darkness himself, as he ended up becoming a bit of a fan of the substance called alcohol, making it so that he had his first crash with the law 2 years later, being charged for public drunkenness and battery. Though, while he did escape jail time, he would consistently clash with the police and those he would consider his greatest enemies and annoyances, the paparazzi. But in all seriousness, who can really handle them well?
Get the fuck out of the way! I can't see! There are cars there, motherfucker!
Eventually, our hero got his big break into the business when Barry got him to work as a writer for a cult show called Night Springs, which is kind of like the Twilight Zone. He wrote several episodes, one even about parallel dimensions and the concept of the multiverse, so take that, Spider-Man!
Get out of the way!
Though while this series kickstarted his career, making Mr. Wheeler into his agent in the process, it wasn't until his first book in his action thriller series, Alex Casey, that got him big. This made Alan Wake into an international name, having him become quite a celebrity. During the next 7 years, the best-selling author wrote 5 more books in this series, all becoming just as beloved as the previous one. It is difficult to pinpoint, but it was during his rise where he started to date and eventually marry Alice. Considering that she is a famous photographer, it is not that confusing in how they kept in contact. But what I find interesting is the fact that the young woman has a severe case of nyctophobia, the fear of darkness, meaning that the romantic candlelight was a typical occurrence in their warm, homely New York apartment. Alan also gave his late mother's clicker to his wife, knowing that since it helped him, maybe it can help his muse.
If I ever got scared of the dark, I could just flip the switch and a magic light would scare the monsters away.
Oh, sure.
Here it is.
Alan.
Maybe it'll help you too.
Yeah, nice story, writer boy. You made that up right now, didn't you?
No. Seriously.
I love you, even if you are a liar. Thanks for this.
Sadly, like every highway called a relationship, some bumps will occur every now and then, and for this wonderful couple, it would be Alan's substance abuse, causing him to rage out at journalists and paparazzi. But worst of all, what happened after his last book in the series, The Sudden Stop, was published. He got a writer's block. I doubt I need to say this, but a writer's block for an author is not an occupational hazard, but more of an assassination. So falling deeper into the dark place known as depression, Alan started drinking more, which in turn had him sink deeper. This caused his marriage to get rather rocky, to the point where arguments were normal in the once wonderful home of our light sources. Keep in mind, this writer's block lasted 2 years until the arguments got so big that both Alan and Alice realized that they needed a true vacation. Which leads us to the fall of all that is bright, the beginning of the game. They went to Bright Falls. Driving to Bright Falls without anything special happening on the way.
What happened, officer?
One thing of note before getting to their destination is the fact that Wake falls asleep while Alice is driving and is visited by a nightmare that is a bit too, real, shall we say. Running away from the dark creature that is yelling in rage that just because Alan is a writer, that does not give him the right to killing off characters just for the drama. Another entity showing up is that of a light source of some kind, giving our man some words of wisdom.
I have something important to tell you. It goes like this. For he did not know that beyond the lake he called home lies a deeper, darker ocean green, where waves are both wilder and more serene. To its ports I've been. To its ports I've been. Do you understand?
No.
Waking up, the couple finally made it to their vacation spot.
Cheer up, handsome. We're here.
Chatting with some of the locals quickly shows us just how famous the literary genius truly is. Whether it be Pat Maine, a talk show host, Cynthia Weaver, the town nut with a fixation on light, or Rose Marigold, his...
Alan Wake. Oh, God, I am your biggest fan.
Oh, fuck.
or the Death Social Link from Persona 4, or whatever. Alan Wake is a famous boy, that is the point! And the point of going into this diner in the first place is to find a guy named Mr. Stucky for the keys to their vacation house. For the keys for their vacation house, but instead met with this old lady. Needing the witch's cabin key, the hero of this tale and his great treasure drive off to Cauldron Lake.
Hey, wait! Mrs. Wake! Your keys!
Getting to the cabin and making sure that they have electricity and noticing that there is a shoebox with some old books by an author named Thomas Zane, Checo would be proud, the happy couple could finally spend their time just living life. But like life, things do not always go the way we want, as when they have set everything up, Alice shows that she has prepared a typewriter for her husband, hoping that this idyllic place would get his creative juices flowing. The only thing coming out of his heart, though, was rage.
Alice, everyone
Hey, just hear me out. There's a local doctor, Dr. Hartman. I read a book of his. He has a private clinic here. He specializes in helping artists.
So
Maybe-
now you want to get me committed?
No, it's not like that.
Don't, just don't! I don't want to hear it! God damn it, Alice! God damn it!
Though as quickly as the rage arrived, love has a tendency to overpower any negative emotion. As when he hears the scream of his wife, instincts drive into gear, making him run back into the house, spotting that the other entrance is open, and deep down into the dark lake, a body. Jumping into the darkness with no hesitation, closing his eyes as he hits the water. Just as quickly, he opened them.
Keep going, Alice. Wake up.
Alice?
Waking up in a car crash is of all things, Wake immediately sets off in finding Alice. But what he does find rather quickly, however, is a page of a script that he never got started on. Departure. This single sheet of paper describes that the protagonist will be attacked by an axe murderer in the woods. And lo and behold, what happens a few minutes later? Well, I suppose you could say this is a shining example of...
Any second now, and Stucky would be knocking on the door with his axe like Nicholson in The Shining.
Okay, very well then. Just wear inspiration on your sleeve. See if I care! Though what is important to care about is the fact that this axe-wielding maniac is indeed Mr. Stucky. Finding a gun and some ammo, almost as if they were just there for him, Alan Wake went for broke by staying woke and shot down the madman and some of the dark henchmen. Though no bodies stayed on the ground. Though having to really move on, he got to a gas station, and here he learned a horrifying truth. When they arrived at Bright Falls, an annual festival was to be taking place 2 weeks after they've settled in, but now, a week left. Wake had forgotten an entire week. But before he could use the phone and call for help, one of the televisions lit up.
All right. I'll keep writing. Outside, there's only darkness. Outside the cabin, outside the story, there's only darkness. I can feel her presence in the dark. Just now, I could smell her perfume in the room. I'll reach her. I'll fix it up. I'll bring her back.
I don't believe this.
Calling the sheriff's department, where most people would feel a sense of comfort in knowing that the worst was behind him. For our hero, however, he knew that it was yet to come. Hearing from the sheriff that the cabin that he mentioned hasn't existed since the 70s, they quickly drive off to Cauldron Lake. And what awaits them? The law enforcer, the seeker of truth, was telling the truth. Remember that this game is set up as a television show? Good, because this video isn't over. Getting patched up by a doctor at the sheriff's office, Alan pushed as hard as possible that he didn't need to go to the hospital. Alice was out there, somewhere, and he needed to find her. Surprisingly, the sheriff, Sarah Breaker, will allow him to walk free as they will be searching for his wife. But there is one issue.
Excuse me. I need to take this. Hello?
Alan, please help me.
Alice?
Stop talking to the law.
A kidnapping has happened. Proving themselves legit by showing the husband that they have his muse's driver's license, they tell him to ditch the police and follow their instructions so that he can find the criminal without backup. Their motives still uncertain. But being a celebrity, people usually find him. The first we will mention being Emil Hartman, a psychiatrist who evidently is the individual that invited the couple to Bright Falls for a potential session.
Did you set something up with her?
I invited her here. My clinic is a place where...
Oh, hey!
But before things could get much worse, now feeling truly alone, there is a second person that found our famous author. And it's the best boy!
Hey, nobody move! Get your hands off of my client!
Who are you?
Barry Wheeler to the rescue! He might come across as a stereotypical money-grubbing agent, but nah, he's the best friend, the best boy, and he has come!
I'm Barry Wheeler, his agent.
Still off the hook, since Hartman didn't seem too affected by the mighty pen punch, our best buddies head on to the Elderwood Visitor Center to rent a cabin for the night. Barry seemed a bit unsure on Alan's story with the dark beings he fought in the woods, but he still will help out his pal, fully believing in the kidnapping. There's also the fact that hearing that Alan has actually written something after these 2 years will also kind of push him, but you know what I'm saying! Though, they are still arguing about the notion of doing this alone, without any help from professionals.
We should go to the sheriff or call the FBI.
Damn it, Barry, they'll kill her!
All jokes aside, we gotta hand it to him. Our hero truly is that, a hero. We are talking about a kidnapping, a hostage situation, while dealing what seemed to be an actual supernatural event. The only thing we know previously when it comes to dealing with any confrontational situations is punching the L out of journalists. So having to go ham, he goes ham. Following the directions from the kidnappers, that is to get to a place called Lover's Peak, Wake is plagued with these weird visions that he can't fully explain, only feeling lightheaded with each episode. And this entire episode is pretty much just a journey up to the meeting place, and when he gets there, he does indeed meet a shady individual. An individual who found some of the weird departure pages that have suddenly been written out of thin air, wanting the entire manuscript. As the kidnapper realized the same thing our leading man did. Departure is predicting everything that is currently happening and what will happen. Of course, not having the pages on hand, all Wake can do is ask for more time in finishing the script, to which the criminal gives 2 days as a deadline, and then having him bring it to an old mine. Oh, and Barry believes Alan fully now with the whole dark evil magic thingamajiggies.
What the hell was that? I saw it from the window. I saw something.
Forget about it, Barry. It's just me going crazy.
You're not crazy. I wish you were crazy, but you're not crazy.
Sadly, saving his muse through writing this script seemed impossible, as the infamous writer's block does not vanish like the Taken's bodies. So, as things seem as dark as the nightmare's reality is dawning down, a phone call from Rose, the fan, brings a light as she claims that she has found all of the pages. But, of course, that would be a bit too easy, wouldn't it?
Have a great day. Hope you come back soon. Welcome to the Oh Dear Diner.
Good girl.
Driving off to meet with Miss Marigold, Barry remarks that he did some research on Cauldron Lake and found some mysteries, like the owner of the small island on the lake before its disappearance was an old writer named Thomas Zane, whose work doesn't seem to exist anywhere. And the other name that causes some interest is Barbara Jagger, Zane's muse that went down to the lake and sadly in the waves she drowned a week prior to the volcano's eruption. Though speaking of muses...
I know what you need. A muse to inspire you.
Oh, for Barry. Barry!
Oh, fuck. I can't believe you've done this.
Turn the light on.
Back to work, boy.
Waking up from the sleepless, drugged-up night, having lost valuable time he could have spent writing, he did, through the magic TV version of himself, learn that he now has some sort of editor of his work, being rather aggressive with their edits, making the story more their own and not the writer's. The name of this editor? Barbara Jagger. Which obviously should raise some questions. Why is a dead lady acting as an editor? Why is the television showing Alan Wake writing and also sharing important information? What is Sam Lake's favorite Xbox One game?
Lego Marvel Superheroes.
Why? Realizing that the situation he is in is dire, and the fact that he might be lifting a heavy burden, but Barry might be just too much for him, the protagonist of this tale heads off to the exit and sees that the police has shown up. Now, he hasn't done anything illegal, but when a random FBI agent named Robert Nightingale goes full western on your ass, you run!
What are? I'm standing right here, you goddamn maniac!
Run Alan does, having a full-on police chase from a very bloodthirsty law enforcer who seemed to be so ready to just end Wake's life for whatever reason, and also for an interesting mystery added to the black cauldron of creativity. As Alan is fleeing, the dark presence out there is acting as if it's trying to keep him safe from the cops.
Wait, are you seriously telling me that geek writer just took out my deputies? Are you kidding? I mean, have you seen this guy? He wears a tweed jacket. Over.
So many questions, yet it keeps you on the edge of your seat. And who better to know what it's like to be seated all the time than the previously mentioned talk show host, Pat Main, which our boy comes across. Feeling the older gentleman might have a bit of a brighter sense, our man hoped to be able to convince him to borrow his car. But just like a few minutes prior, Robert.
I started blasting.
What the hell's the matter with you? There's a civilian in there.
No rest for the weary, our protagonist keeps on running for his life. Luckily, according to the script that Nostradamus will be proud of, Maine got out from the situation without a scratch.
Young man, you almost shot me. You don't shoot off rounds at people like that. What's the matter with you? Nightingale shook his arm free, marched out, his cheeks burned with rage and humiliation.
Speaking of rage and humiliation, on his escape, Mr. Celebrity shoots down tons of dark presence creatures, inanimate objects come to life, and a massive piece of machinery. Christine Best Girl, Karu for Laifu, and it is during a drive where Alan Wake has truly accepted what is going on. The story in the manuscript, his own writing, was coming true. It wasn't predicting anything. He was creating all of these events. And I know what you're thinking. If you find pages that explains what will happen in the future, pages that you wrote, you'd feel at ease, because maybe you can do something about it. Well...
The flashlight was heavy in my hand, and each pull of the trigger sent a painful shock up my arm. But I was finally out of the woods, and things were looking up. That's when I heard the chainsaw.
Oh, Jesus Christ, I'd have a heart attack. There is also the fact that you also might not have the specific page needed to understand some well-written twists and turns.
The bastard never showed up.
So before he can confront the madman, he overhears something rather important.
We don't have a wife. We don't know where she is. She's probably drowned.
Wait a minute. If they didn't have Alice, how did they use her voice during the phone calls? What?
This is the end.
What the fuck? Waking up, Wake finds himself at Emil Hartman's clinic, the psychiatrist that faced the wrath of Alan. In all fairness, they both do have one thing in common, as the doctor has written before and seemed to be rather successful. Huh. I don't know what the game is trying to tell me with this, so you be the detective there. Though, a detective is not needed to understand why the author is locked up in this clinic, as the first thing the doctor does is lie about the death of Alice. Of course it is a deception, how could it not be? So Wake realizes quickly that he simply has to play along until he can find an opening. In this locale are some other patients, all from a grown man with childlike tendencies making video games, a man who is forced to paint paintings, to...
These two are the Anderson brothers, Odin and Tor.
He'd love to fish out our secrets, but he has no clue. He's not crazy enough. Not crazy like us, Sonny. Yeah!
In this clinic that seemed to only have creative individuals as patients, Alan gained some enlightenment, but not from the staff, but everything else. A new TVV, television vision, teaches our guy that this dark presence wearing Barbara Jagger skin is using Wake to write the story it wants. That will cause death in untold quantities and definitely will not help the writer save his wife.
There's a hole in her chest where her heart should be. I think I've made a horrible mistake. I don't think I'm any closer to saving Alice. It's been lying to me, using me to get the story it wants, and the story will come true.
He learns from his fellow patients that Emil is forcing the creative around him to make what he wants, almost to a horrifying degree, including that Hartman knew the mysterious Thomas Zane, and that both of them knew that the creative works made close to Cauldron Lake came into reality. Yet when the poet considered stopping at a fair...
It exhilarated him. But there was fear, too. If not for his young assistant Emil, he would have given it up. But Emil convinced him otherwise. He too had a way with words.
Another fact that gained some light was that the psychiatrist was behind the kidnapping, hoping to get one of the most creative minds under his heel, using recorded conversation with Alice to trick Wake. Yet what truly shook Alan to his core was not learning about the evil doctor, or that a supernatural being was manipulating him, or anything of a physical danger. No, it was something that hit far closer to his heart.
I'm so afraid I'm gonna lose him, and we're not even talking anymore. He doesn't let me in anymore. Sometimes I almost wish Alan would take a swing at me, because at least that'd lead to a conversation he couldn't just march out of.
Learning from the Andersons that he needs to get to their farm to gain insight on what is happening, our boy actually comes across his agent in the clinic, who has been searching for his BFF after the police released him, though he did get one piece of revenge on Rose for what happened.
What's with the cutout?
I stole it from the diner to piss off Rose after what she did to us. That'll teach her.
Yeah, that's a harsh punishment.
So as they finally confront the evil doctor, after finding all of the pages that he had on him, things get rather dark as all the anger within comes forth, showing Barry, his best friend, just how much these few nights have changed a once friendly man.
Barry, get out of here. I'll catch up with you. Get a car.
Oh, Al, let's just...
Go!
Wake, listen to me. This is a mistake.
But before any action can be made, the dark presence attacks, making Alan run towards the door, locking it behind him, leaving Emil to his fellow antagonist of the story. All of this with a smile on his face. Making their escape, our duo go through everything they know so far. The fact that the work of artists comes to true fruition, the dark presence is using it to its own advantage, and the departure script is the primary source for how it has gotten so much control and power. Plus,
they never had Alice. She's trapped in the darkness at the bottom of the lake, but she's not dead.
Al, how can you know that?
I know, Barry. I can...
Al,
No, listen. I can bring her back. I can find her. There's something special about this place. The lake, it does something to the works of art created here. It makes them come true.
I believe you. Crazy or not, you're not delusional. Weird shit's going down. That's a fact. I'm on board, man. I'm with you.
working together, even with some split-ups, danger, and going full Children of the Elder Gods, the dynamic duo eventually finds what they need in the farm of the Crazy Twins, and the message they were looking for.
Okay.
We need to find Cynthia Weaver. We'll stay here for the night and head back to town as soon as it gets light.
Realizing that they need to find Bright Falls light enthusiast, Cynthia Weaver, they decide to spend the night in the safety of the house, with Wheeler getting the best idea ever. Getting drunk on the Anderson twins' secret sauce!
Al, lots of hours before dawn. Might as well get some rest. And by rest, I mean drunk.
Come on, Barry, this is... Yeah, what the hell?
And after having a lovely evening with his best pal, the moonshine shone light in his mind as he slept. He finally got the answer to the biggest question. What happened that first week? After jumping into the lake, the dark presence touched his mind, tricking him into believing that if he wrote the departure manuscript, he could save his dead Alice. But the thing is, what made him different from the others taken by the evil was that it needed his mind to be as unbroken as possible, and that is what allowed him to save himself by writing him to be the protagonist and have Zane show up and save him from the cabin before finishing the story, then spreading many of the pages around, meaning that the typewriter at the bottom of the lake holds the unfinished final page, the conclusion of the horror story.
I wrote it. It's my fault.
That's right, James Joyce. It's your fault, and you're gonna pay for it.
A lot of cliffhangers in this game, huh? Just to quickly say why the Shoot Happy Nightingale didn't blast our hero in his sleep, he actually finds some sense of morality during the night, so, literally and literary dodged a bullet. Anyways, waking up in a cell at the sheriff's department, Alan knows that they need to find Cynthia Weaver, but being locked up there makes things a bit too difficult. But, like any good story, a coincidence has to happen.
Get back in the cell, Stephen King. The only way you're leaving this place is over my dead...
Wait a minute. I know this...
Huh? When seeing something like that, it's no real surprise that Sarah Breaker trusts Wake and Wheeler immediately. Gathering her stuff, they set off to get to a chopper, and I feel like the duo is happy in having someone that's used in wielding a gun for a change on their side. Though it is Barry that does the smartest thing in this tale so far. He turns himself into what I feel he perfectly represents. A Christmas tree.
See this headlamp? It's my flaming eye of Mordor.
Getting to the chopper, they eventually get to the power plant where they see that Lady of the Light has prepared for this moment. She also knew Mr. Zane before, wanting to be his muse, and Thomas's story gets some light on it. After the poet lost Barbara Jagger, his wife, he, who understood that the lake had some magical power, chose to simply write down that she returned. But as this was, in simple terms, a plot hole, the dark presence chose to fill in the gaps on how the woman came back. and it chose to have the resurrection be through becoming an avatar of the evil being, meaning that the dark presence actually gets more powerful the more plot holes or story inconsistencies there are.
This is a film about space wizards intended for children.
As he saw his grave mistake, he wrote down that both he and his wife would vanish without a trace, hoping to undo what he did. But knowing that things could still go wrong, he made a loophole, writing down that the only thing that will stay behind of his is what he put in a shoebox. And that box is in the bright room. And what is in the box?
One evening, his mother, sitting by his bed, offered him an old light switch. She called it the clicker, and flicking the switch would turn on a magical light that would drive the beast away. As he stood on the rim of Cauldron Lake, the clicker in his hand, he took a deep breath and jumped.
My mind swirled. I'd given the clicker to Alice, yet it was here. Zane had written it into existence in a story I had written.
Alright, this is one of the biggest mysteries in this series, and in all honesty, I do not have the answers for this. On one side, this could imply, with the loophole that Zane put out there, Alan could have written in the parchment that he found the ultimate weapon in the box. Or maybe Zane wrote Alan into existence. Keep in mind, the clicker came from Alan's mom. But sometimes it doesn't matter what the answer is, only that there is an answer. And the answer for what is needed right now is the clicker. Finally knowing that he needs to return to the dark place, the writer understands that he cannot have the others go with him.
I'm sorry, Sarah, but I need to do this alone. Barry, take her gun. Miss Weaver, close the door when I leave.
Good luck, Al.
See you later.
But just as the protagonist of the story understands what needs to be done, so does the antagonist. Now being done with the tired man, knowing that he is a true threat to what it wants, throwing everything it has at him. And on his side, Alan uses everything he has to get back to where it all started. Cauldron Lake.
Turn back now. Stop now. I will kill your wife. Alice never loved you.
He took a deep breath and jumped.
Hell! Finally returned to the cabin, he stands face to face with the monster that he gave so much power to, the avatar of the dark presence. And as he holds what his mother once gave him to stop fearing the dark, what he once gave to his wife to banish the darkness, and what Zane chose as the answer to stop the dark presence, the light switch, the clicker, is used in the story. Just because the witch is gone, the poisonous cauldron is still turning. So seating himself where he once was forced to work, now he finally has overcome his writer's block. Now he can save Alice. The definition of a muse is a person or personified force who is the source of inspiration for a creative artist. Alice is Alan's muse, yet he lost sight of his happiness, his light, as the writer's block took over, and he couldn't see what he was pushing away in his frustration. But when he lost his love and realized his mistake, he turned into the man Alice was inspired by, the man that now chose sacrifice, to lock himself into the dark place, to ride the darkness at bay, just to keep his wife safe. Like many horror stories, the ending leaves a lot up for interpretation. But it also keeps things enough open for a sequel to get a happy ending, where we will continue this tale as well. But a sequel in any genre need to push things further, to raise the stakes. The action in an action sequel need to be grander. Drama in a drama sequel needs to be greater. And the horror in a horror sequel need to be far more horrifying. And that is the mind of Alan Wake.